friends, Christy Teji here, your host for the Productive Passions podcast. Let me ask you, is there something different you dream of doing but don't know where to begin? If you're feeling suffocated, anxious, or you feel there's something different calling you, come along with me for candid conversations with people who have embarked on a journey to put their passions to work for them. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Life is too short to stay stuck.
Hi friends, want to unlock your entrepreneurial potential? Today's episode features rising star DeVonne Hart, founder and CEO of Planet Ponics, who's navigating the thrilling challenges of his first venture. Join us as this young visionary shares how his daily moments of stillness can spark million-dollar ideas and why that nagging gut feeling might be your next breakthrough. Plus, get a game-changing book recommendation that's transformed his entrepreneurial journey. Whether you're launching your first venture or scaling your empire, this conversation reveals why your most powerful business strategy might be the one you haven't tried yet. DeVonne, thank you for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you here on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Tell me about your company, your mission, and how you're positioning it to be a disruptor in the market.
Cool. My company, Planet Ponics, is an ag tech company. We're focused on democratizing urban agriculture. That has been our mission since the very beginning. And the only way for us to really have done that was to just find like those holes in the market, specifically in the hydroponics industry, that were able to increase the accessibility of hydroponics to novice growers and people who already have experience in the market. And we were able to do that by creating a passive hydroponic system. And we coupled that with a project-based learning guidebook, which is how we've been able to get a lot of our traction so far. And because it's primarily utilized in learning environments, and institutions and organizations are searching for tools that they can incorporate into their learning environment. So by making the product like this, we've been able to get traction from those nonprofits and institutions that have been searching for those solutions.
Gosh, that's a lot. So I'm going to break that down a little bit because I wanted to ask you about democratizing urban agriculture. What do you mean by that?
For one, like I've gotten experience just growing up and like being with my grandparents and my family. They've always had gardens in their backyards and whatnot, but that's only because they've had the space to have gardens in their backyard. I actually grew up and I had like an apartment like with my family, or we never like really had like a yard or anything. So when I did get the chance to actually have a yard, we were growing in our backyards, but my mom didn't really have like any raised beds or anything. So I actually went ahead and tried hydroponics and built like my own system in the backyard, and it was like on the side of the yard, so it didn't take up much space, and it was pretty much out of my mom's sight, so she didn't even like really have anything to say about it because she just was like happy to see me doing something in the backyard, and it turned into what I'm doing with Planet Ponics. But since there's so little amount of like youth at least that gets the opportunity to actually garden or even practice hydroponics, there's a lot of kids who are like dissociated or detached from their food system and just like where their food comes from and nature in general, and just seeing like plants grow and getting their hands in the dirt or feet on actual real grass and stuff like that. So that's what democratizing urban agriculture is really about.
On your website, you talk about empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important, and how are you weaving that into the fabric of your organization?
Empathy is one of our core values with Planet. Like the whole founding principle it revolves around empathy, and with our design ethos, with human-centric design, empathy is just at the forefront of it. We're designing for humans, by humans, and we want to make that a sustainable, cohesive nature with our designs and like the manufacturing processes, and that just all the way down to the end user, and like understanding like what they're going through and how we can make their lives better or easier, simpler, more accessible.
One of the things that I think impresses me so much about you is your experience with nature. You're going out in nature, you're going out and trying to figure out how to put a garden together yourself. Why is it important to you to bring that, to bring nature, to bring planet ponics to the youth?
Why is that important to me?
Yeah.
Mainly because I find it important just for myself, and having a real genuine connection with the nature I'm invested in here, because just sustainability has been really pushed to us, at least my experience in school and understanding like how climate change is affecting us, and just how our actions and how we're interacting with nature affects so many species, and like natural water and forests and things like that. So I feel like that is why it's been mainly important to me. But aside from that, just the process of getting food from farms onto the tables of people all around the world has gotten increasingly more difficult because of how we've treated nature, and like causing soil degradation, or just like polluting a lot of like our natural waters and stuff like that. So it's really important that we're able to like keep this going for so many more generations like coming after us. And if we're not really paying attention to it, then future generations are going to have to like really focus on it. But if we're not focusing on it now, it just makes it a much more of a burden for them later. And I feel like I feel that now, just like with how nature has been treated over the past few generations, and then my generation having to like think of solutions and come up with innovative ideas to make sustainability a part of like just our business models in general, whether it's for like creating things that help with food production, or just overall with technology and education in general, making sure that it's at the forefront of all things.
So, DeVonne, I hear a bit of an environmentalist in you.
Yeah.
Right now, that's a bit controversial depending on who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Your message is important not just to the youth, but to the general masses. How do you respond to people who say, there's not an issue, you are just making things up to sell your product? How do you respond to that?
Well, the UN definitely supports what I'm talking about, because they've done a
Tell
lot
me
of
about
studies
that.
with
What is the
it.
UN saying?
They have their sustainable development goals, and one of their sustainable development goals is food security. And what is affecting food security is primarily to do with like how our climates is kind of changing. For example, like I've had contact with someone who owns land in Tobago, and he was telling me about how all the traditional things that they were doing to grow their food on that island isn't necessarily working as effective as it used to a generation or even 2 or 3 generations ago, just because of
And
climate
why? And what are
change.
they seeing?
It's a lot hotter during their hot months. It's a lot colder or wet during their wet months. So that just affects like their overall food production processes. And if they don't have the tools to effectively continue making the amount of food that they've been making over the past couple generations for their population, it just makes it more stressful for them. And they have to depend more so on the mainlands around them to produce that food. But that's just
Which
an
is then more
example.
expensive, right?
It's already expensive for them. I mean, let alone just like food production being more expensive, like actual food costs for like the average consumer is more expensive over the years.
So, do you see plant ponics being a solution for people in that region and globally?
So at least with the passive hydroponic system design, the empathy in that design is for people of any background anywhere around the world to be able to use this technology to make the food or the plants or herbs that they're trying to make with it, rather than depending on like things that have high electricity costs or really complicated assembly and things like that. Because not everyone has like dependable water sources or electrical sources and things like that. So we designed it to have that in mind. So um, people in West Africa or people in the Middle East could learn how to do hydroponics without having to worry about like electricity and things like that.
You talk about revolutionizing the way food is grown and consumed. There's a lot of concern about the over-processed nature of our food right now. Does Planet Ponics aim to be a part of the solution to that over-processed nature of our food?
I feel like that's kind of just a byproduct of what we're doing. There's a bunch of companies and organizations who are pushing that with and without us. So I feel like we're kind of running side by side along this marathon pretty much. And I'm happy to be, a part of this journey. I think that what we're doing is making it more accessible for the knowledge of how to grow plants and food in the environments that people are in. That can be whether they're in an apartment building or they're like in urban areas or more so in rural areas, and they're not necessarily given the access to this type of knowledge and technology because they're more so into traditional farming. But hydroponics isn't a replacement to traditional farming. It's just a way for you to grow in the environment that you are in. So if you are able to grow in a traditional fashion for agriculture, you should. And then if you can add this on top of it, it might help increase like your food production, and you're able to have a surplus at that point and things like that. Because like we said, since climate change is happening, we're not able to grow the same way that we have been growing over the past couple of generations. So this is something that we can add on top. It's not necessarily something that we use to completely replace traditional farming. And a lot of people have like the concerns of like, is it as nutritious as like traditional farming and whatnot? And that just
Is
goes
it?
back to it can be even more because just it depends on how we're actually feeding the plants. The minerals that are inside this water, what are we putting inside of it? Is it a lot of chemicals? Are we trying to use as much natural organic inputs as possible into our plant nutrients? Like that makes a difference in the nutrition value of these plants. Same way that we would do it for nutritional farming. If we're not putting organic or as much natural inputs into our soil, then our plants are not going to be as healthy or as nutritious as they could be.
So, one of the things I understand about the work that you're doing is that it also includes education and education in the public school system. Is that correct?
We were able to do a pilot program with elite public schools in Vallejo, California, and
Mhm.
that was very fruitful. The kids were very interactive with the content that we were presenting them with, and we were able to take that information and make some adjustments for our guidebook. And it's been great to see the reaction from like as young as 6 years old about like how plants are grown to like as old as like 13, and like how they're seeing the importance of food security, what a food desert is, and like how is it affecting them, and how can they interact with that environment and like change how they're viewing their food system and how they can be engaging with it a little bit better.
Is there any chance that that pilot will grow and get to other schools?
That's the goal, really. That's where our main traction has been coming from, at least so far. It's been with organizations that are prioritizing that youth resilience and institutions that are trying to incorporate project-based learning.
That's fantastic. I could see so many avenues for what you're talking about. That's very exciting. You were awarded money for your very first pitch competition. Tell me about that experience.
That experience was pretty interesting. Like the lead up to that wasn't all that great. And the actual pitch went really poorly, in my opinion. I
But
was able
but you
to.
you were awarded, but you Was it poor in
Yeah.
your opinion, but not others maybe?
So what happened is my grandpa had passed away like a week before, and I was actually with
Shit.
him. So that was a lot of emotional turmoil that I was going through leading up
For
to the actual
sure.
pitch. Yeah, and like I was in the Bay Area, my school's in LA, so there's a whole drive down there. I got
And
my
that's not a
outfit.
little drive.
Yeah, it's 300 something miles. But yeah, I drove down there. I got my outfit the day of, and I practiced as much as I could leading up to my pitch. And then just like during like the first couple minutes of my pitch, I realized that like all of my notes were out of order, and you could just tell like where I was at mentally leading up to that. And I just threw away the cards and just went ahead and just started talking, like
Talking about what you know,
believing,
right?
yeah, what I know, and just like how I believe in what I'm trying to do, and why it's important. And I got into Q&A, and they were really liking my answers, and they really liked me overall, and I was able to come out with a second place in that first pitch. And that was how I was introduced to Ankh Impact Ventures and Pierre Rowland, and they've been able to help me ever since. So
So what did you do with that first check that you got?
honestly, I saved it for a really long time. I didn't really spend any of my earnings until I was able to acquire my retail store here in Santa Rosa. And now I'm currently a retail owner of a garden hydroponic supply store in Santa Rosa, California. And yeah, that was what I used like my first earnings for, aside from like attorney fees and stuff like that. So
DeVonne, if you don't mind my asking, and certainly you don't have to answer this question, but how old are you?
I'm 24.
You're 24 years old. You've started your own company and you bought Santa Rosa Garden Supply.
Mhm.
That's pretty significant. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to hold that for a moment because I want to ask you about purchasing the supply company. How does that move strategically place Planet Ponics in the local community, but also for the future?
So the strategy behind it was to get my face in front of the community, just to show that like I'm actually trying to be in this space. From here, I was able to meet like a lot of great people that were able to like help me navigate the industry. I was introduced to the right manufacturers, the right suppliers, logistics, and things like that. So it was able for me to get my brand out there, but also get me as like my professional entrepreneurial career started, because I didn't necessarily have a whole lot of prior industry experience, let alone like my own network within the industry. And since I was starting by myself, I am a solo founder. It just helped me branch out into like establishing myself within the industry altogether. And there's not too many retail stores as is that are left. There's most of them are owned by like bigger corporations.
Yeah.
Um, so like being independently owned, I was able to like actually get to talk to customers, learn what their problems are, what they're experiencing with their hydroponics or gardening journeys and things like that. And then also just get
Sounds like
introduced to
empathy to me.
yeah, and get introduced to a lot of commercial cultivators, and seeing like what the commercial side was looking like, because it's not just like retail shoppers that I have coming in. There's other business owners that need things, whether it's just same day things, or we're putting together larger orders to help fulfill like their whole growing operations.
DeVonne, I have to tell you, I am a fan. I really am. And I'm excited to talk to you where you are right now in your journey because I have a feeling you're going to be moving on to do even more and bigger things. Again, we'll hold that for a little bit later, but it is such a pleasure talking to you and hearing you talk about not only what you've done, but what some of the challenges have been. And I wanted to ask you, based on those challenges, what has it been like? How difficult has it gone from having this really cool, great idea to developing the prototype, to overcoming manufacturing challenges and finding the right partner?
I'm still figuring out how to really go about the whole manufacturing process. The prototyping phase was very interesting. It took me a while longer than I thought I'd have to take. But once I was able to get the prototype done, I was put in position to like actually start manufacturing it, and I was introduced to, or I actually introduced myself to him. I forget his last name, but his name's Skylar, and he was able to help me with my whole prototyping phase of the passive hydroponic system, and he was able to introduce me to some manufacturers. But then I was also able to talk to some other manufacturers just throughout the network that I was able to build by acquiring this retail store, and it was kind of hard to go from just the ideation phase to actually getting a prototype. Just to like there's just like a failure success process, and going through that of like just actually creating something physical. Because like I had a whole lot of like illustrations and like web designs and things like that I was making. But once you're able to actually get a physical prototype, I saw just like the excitement of showing people a lot differently. So that just like confirmed like what I was trying to do a lot more. So it was happy to see, but that didn't happen until this year. And that was 2 years in the making, but like an actual year of prototyping and like the design failures and things like that. So
And that's what I want people to hear and understand is, DeVonne, you didn't wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to start this company and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to go pitch it and win some money. You've been doing this for several years, correct?
mm-hmm.
So when I talk to people, one of the things that comes up almost every single conversation is failure. And one of the things I think people are really learning is that failure is not what it used to be years ago. Failure is not the end, unless you let it be the end. Failure is the thing that helps you pivot and go in a different direction, or makes you slow down, relook at, rethink, and continue on, hopefully. How much have you learned from your quote unquote failures?
Honestly, it's been everything. I would have considered that first pitch to be a failure. I feel like if anything, I fail forward most of the time. If I do feel like I failed, and it's not necessarily failing forward, it's usually something that's kind of out of my control, and like I can't really, not that I can't do anything about it, but it just shows that like there needs to be some other either procedures or just like boundaries set to where that doesn't happen again. But outside of those failures that might occur, I would say most of the time I'm failing forward by just like trying things. Especially, I wouldn't say that I'm a first gen entrepreneur, but I'm technically like a first gen entrepreneur because my parents weren't doing entrepreneurship, my grandparents weren't doing it, so it wasn't always around me, but it wasn't that people around me weren't trying to have side hustles and things like that. But that I feel like that's more self-employment. So I feel like after just getting into entrepreneurship and creating my own space and my finding my own market segment, that whole process was a whole lot of like trying and failing and then trying something new, and then maybe that was a little bit more successful. And then just kind of just moving from there and continuously growing, and the entire entrepreneurial journey is very much a spiritual journey. So
Tell me
you're
about that.
just there's this book, or at least one of my mentors, his name is Courtney Smith. um he told me to read this book called Ego is the Enemy, and that book pretty much goes over that entire spiritual journey of entrepreneurship. And um I would say the more that you figure out yourself, either like spiritually, you'll find paths and you'll find breakthroughs in your entrepreneurial journey. And it's one step at a time, of course, but at least from what I've noticed is that when I do find my breakthroughs spiritually, I find some type of success entrepreneurially. And that just might be overcoming something within my mental space, my emotional space. There might be something going on in just my life in general, and that's just a part of my journey. And then once I'm able to figure those things out, typically something else happens right after that. And that's just been constant, continuous throughout this entire process. So,
I was taking some notes when you said that. It sounds like, first of all, that you would recommend that book. Is that correct?
yeah, definitely.
So I'll put in the show notes, I'll put the information about the book in the show notes. But one of the things you said is that when you were overcoming those emotional or mental challenges, that in that space, that's led to evolution. Is that a
Yes.
fair? Okay. Okay. So I will put that information in the show notes. So if anybody wants to go and find the name of that book and the author, that'll be in there. Who has been the greatest influencer in your life to date?
In my life, I mean, obviously, like my parents, just because they've been so constant throughout my entire life, like especially like my mom and my dad easily. But um, I would say just me, just showing up for myself. Like it just takes so much out of you to like show up sometimes. Like even today, like it can be um just like a mental challenge of like choosing yourself or choosing to keep going. That could be a lot of it most of the time. It may not even be that there's a whole lot of like external things happening to you. It's a lot of just like your inner world and understanding what's going on in your inner world. And once you're able to understand that, you're able to know how to move forward. So I would say like the most prevalent person in my life is just myself, especially
You
being a
know what?
solo founder.
I love that. So, for somebody who's listening that may be struggling with what's going on inside, what advice do you have for them? Or do you have something that you follow to help you get out of that or get past that or work through it?
Um, I would say definitely journaling, meditating. Um, like once you're kind of like quiet your mind and really just start to feel your inner world, you definitely are able to open up those paths and like find where those breakthroughs can be. It's not easy. Definitely like reading books like Ego is the Enemy definitely helped me in that process. But like once you're just writing stuff down and you kind of just see like where your mind is flowing, and you'll start to see those avenues of oh, I could go here. Yes, there might be these cons or there's things that might happen, but overall I would say that you kind of just have to go with your intuition a lot of the times, especially like being a solo founder. You could bounce off ideas on your go-to people, whether they're experts in that industry or just your entrepreneurial mentors, or just overall just business mentors too. Because I'm not like an expert in business. I went to school for business, and I'm happy to have gotten my degree in business, but I would say 90% of everything that I've experienced in business, I did not learn in school.
But you're
Uh,
developing that, right? Like
yeah.
all of these steps that you're talking about, that's moving you towards being more of an expert. And at
hmm
24 years old, I don't know if anybody would expect you to be an expert on all of these things. How did that get cultivated in DeVonne Hart?
I would say it's a combination of both. Like I was mentioning earlier, Court, he definitely preaches that a lot. He's probably like one of my favorite mentors just through my
And who
entire
is
life.
that?
His name's Courtney Smith. He owns Court Smith. It's like a sport athleisure company here in Oakland, California. And he's a great person to talk to when it comes to like a lot of entrepreneurial stuff, especially being like a young Black entrepreneur. There's so many like hurdles that you go through that not many people are gonna understand unless they've like lived a similar experience as you. But I would say he definitely preaches a lot of stuff like that, which introduced me to those concepts. But that, and then just reading books. I know I mentioned Ego is the Enemy previously, but there's a bunch of other books that I read that definitely opened up my mind to how to navigate the entrepreneurial journey. I'm blessed with having a space like this, having opportunities like this, and I'm trying to make the most out of them. That I I should try to take up some type of mentorship or being a good role model to a group of people, whether that's my family or people who I come across. And I mean, I'm built my company off of trying to set an example within the industry, because there's not really many other people within my industry doing what I'm trying to do.
I read, I think it was on your website, and I love this. Part of what it said, or part of what I read said, our story is still being written. What is the title of the next chapter?
Well, right now I'm actually in like a pivoting process. Like the lease here at the store is actually coming to an end at the end of this year. So, I'm going to be transitioning into like having the store be more e-commerce and doing more consulting and, trying to help people just like in a different manner of not necessarily having to have a retail space. But, I would say this next chapter is like actually delivering and fulfilling on like these orders and like delivering on this product that I've been developing for all this time.
What does the end of the book look like?
Keep it as simple as possible until I have to innovate and pivot again and make it something more grand or something new or something even more innovative than what we started off with. Kind of just like setting up a infrastructure of something that could for Planet to kind of just work off of what we have now and literally just start riding off of that and have something consistent. And because there's that's been one of the main things I've been striving for this entire time. The plan is having something consistent, because it's really hard with doing all this by myself. So, and it's not always consistent with like the income that's coming in, or
Sure.
people who are showing up, or infrastructure that's here right now. So creating that consistency is really like my end goal.
So, what about the day someone says, Mr. Hart, I'd like to buy your company from you?
I'm definitely open to that. I'm not sure what that offer would be, or how or like what I would want out of that necessarily. I haven't put a whole lot of thought about it into it, but I definitely think that there's that possibility. At least with the passive hydroponic system, what I'm seeing for the design is actually like a licensing process for the design. It doesn't have to have my logos on it. It can have anybody's logos on it. So that was kind of like one of those things of having like a consistent income or consistent infrastructure for Planet, is actually just licensing the design and the guidebooks, and or even future would like to have like journals or planners, like gardening planners and things like that. But yeah, and just licensing the design and the technology for them to have their logos on it, so that they're able to have them in grocery stores, or there might be a brand partnership with like a Hello Kitty or something like that.
Where do you want to be in 25 years?
In 25 years, definitely happy and healthy. Mm, Aside from that, just being like a real solid force within my community, and being able to like actually get things done for my community, and also just like, even if that's not here in California, because like when I'm saying community, I'm thinking California, but like that could be in the community that I'm building with Planet, and that could be global, and like being able to like provide things that are amazing and innovative and game changing for my community, because that's just like what I'm focused on right now, and just what I've been building so much for like the past couple years. If it's something I'm still doing for the next 5 to 10 years, in 25 years, if I'm able to still be able to have the influence on that community, and still be able to provide things that are benefiting that community, that's really the goal.
Well, DeVonne, I think your last name is so appropriate for you. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.